Hello students, today we're going to look at a few more solutions to some practice exercises. These have to deal with factoring trinomials. They're found on page 90 of chapter 7 in book 3 of your ma1025 booklets. And it's asking us to factor each trinomial that's in this form. So let's tackle the first one we have there, which is h. It has 4x squared plus 5x minus 6. Now the rules of factoring apply for any type of factoring, and you always look for a GCF first. Is there a greatest common factor? Because if you're factoring properly or completely, you must remove the GCF first. Now, as you can see, we have no GCF in this one. Nothing in common in all three terms. So we don't have to worry about GCF in this particular problem. But always check for GCF first. Now, if it's a trinomial and if it's factorable, right, you can work backwards basically from your multiplication method. We want to try to find two numbers that multiply to give you this times this, the leading coefficient times the constant. So we want to find two numbers that multiply to give you negative 24, right? Because 4 times negative 6 is negative 24. So that's how we get that number, right? So we want to find two numbers. So we're looking for two numbers now. So we want to try to find two numbers, all right, that multiply or product, two numbers whose product, which means multiply, I'll call it P for product, whose product is negative 24. Now remember where you get the product from. This number times this number, okay? And that add up, so I'll call it sum. So find two numbers whose product is negative 24, P for product, multiply, and whose sum is the middle term coefficient. So whose sum is just this, 5. Okay, so we want to find two numbers that multiply to give you negative 24 and add to give you 5. Now if you can find those two numbers, then it's factorable. So what two numbers multiply to give you? So you might just try a couple. So what gives you negative 24? You might try negative 6 times 4. That is definitely negative 24. But when you add those same two numbers together, you get negative 2. No, we need positive 5. So it's not these two. Okay? Now you're probably thinking ahead of me and saying, well, try 8 and 3. Okay, this time I'll try negative 8 times positive 3. Now, that works for multiplying, check. But when I add the same two numbers together, I must be able to get the number here, which is positive 5. But I get negative 5. Got this right. I got the right number, but the wrong sign. And when that happens, okay, you usually just have the signs backwards. So now I'm going to try positive 8 times negative 3. Let's see what I get. I get negative 24, so check, that works. Two numbers multiply to give me negative 24. Positive 8 plus negative 3, I get positive 5. Check. So I found my two numbers. They are 8 and negative 3. Once you find those two numbers, then you do what? You decompose or break the middle term down to those two numbers. So we're going to go from 3 terms now to 4 terms. The 4x squared stays the same, stays out front. Now use these two numbers in any order. So I'm going to use 8, and of course I got to use x because it's 5x, and I'm going to use negative 3x. So see where I put these two numbers back? So this becomes 8x, and this becomes negative 3x. Okay, and then what did I do with the 6? Well, I didn't use it, so or the negative 6, I just move it down. Now, so I have this 4 term right here. So I have 4 terms right here, right? So how do you factor 4 terms? Now we've done that before, right? We've done 4 terms before. How do you do that? Well, you factor by what's called grouping. Okay? Now, let me just go back, get rid of that. Okay, so in the grouping one, you're looking for 2 terms at a time, or you're doing 2 terms at a time. So ignore this for a second. Just look at the first two. What's common between 4x squared and 8x? What's common between 4x squared and 8x? And 4x is a common factor. Take that GCF just from those two terms, and look what you get. You get x plus 2, don't you? Now, what's common in the second group? Now, if they're both negative, or the first term is negative, remove a negative sign. So negative 3 is common. Now, what are you going to be left with? You're also going to be left with x plus 2, because negative divided by negative is positive, right? Each time, isn't it? Now, when you do this method, this binomial here with this binomial here must be the same, or you've done something wrong. Now I can remove the x plus 2 from each group of terms up there, and you're left with simply 4x subtract 3. Look at that. Done. And this is a very specific method. Now you can check this by multiplying it back out. Right? You can multiply to check. Alright? And take your two factors and multiply them. I would get x times 4x, right? Which is 4x squared. Then I'd get x times minus 3, which is minus 3x. Then I'd get 2 times 4x, which is 8x. And I'd get 2 times negative 3, which is negative 6. I add these two together, I get 4x squared plus 5x subtract 6. Exact same trinomial I have up here. So I know my factors are correct. Okay, now the next one. What do we do with the next one? Let's put a line down there and split these so I can see it separated a bit. Alright, let's just draw a line down there. Okay, give ourselves some separation. Now, so what do we do with this next one? Same idea. So we want to find two numbers that multiply to give you, now the product is going to be what? 4 times 15. Okay, 4 times 15. Alright, which is 60. So we need a product that is 60. Okay, so let me just tidy that up a bit. Alright, so we're trying to find two numbers who multiply, or product, whatever, right? Find two numbers that multiply to give you 4 times 15, which is 60. So multiply to give you 60, but add together to give you the middle term, which is negative 23. Now you have to come up with those terms. Now, if you multiply to get a positive and add to get a negative, they must be both negative. So try something, see if it works. Well, you know, the negative 6 times negative 10 would be 60, but if I add negative 6 and negative 10, that's negative 16. So that's no good. What two numbers multiply to give you? You could try 3 and 20. Oh, 3 and 20. Look at that. That might work. Let's see. Negative 3 times negative 20. What is that? Let's look. Yeah, that's indeed negative 60. Negative 3 plus negative 20. Look at that. Negative 23. Bingo. We have our numbers. They are negative 3 and negative 20. So you play with it for a few minutes. Just trial and error if you like. Okay? Now what do you do with those? Remember, this term, front term, stays the same. This term becomes now two terms using the two new numbers you found. So negative 3a, negative 20a. And this number carries down as well. So you go from 3 terms to 4 terms. Now factor by grouping. What's in this first group? What do you see common? I see a common. Take a out, I'm left with 4a subtract 3. What do you see common in the second group of terms? I see, now if it's minus here, remove a minus, okay? And that will change the last term to minus. I'm going to factor out a 5, looks common. 20 divided by 5, that's 4a. Now positive divided by negative, right, is negative 15 divided by 5 is 3. And look, again, what happened? These two came out to be exactly the same, which they should be. So you remove that same factor, 4a subtract 3, and all you're left with is a minus 5. So there's your final answer for the second one there. 4a subtract 3 times a minus 5 are your two factors. Alright, and again you could multiply to check, and you can check that on your own. Alright, hopefully that helps. Have a good day.